Hey everybody, this is Phil here, and just at the top of the show, I wanted to let you know that we had some issues with Dave's audio this week. It only persists until about the 8.5 minute mark, so please bear with us until then. I did the best I could to save it, but you can still understand him anyway. You know what? Make sure you're not listening to this on a crowded train or subway or in the middle of a parade or some kind of concert or something like that. Okay? Cool. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Let It Bleed podcast, a place where you can hear the liquor-fueled ramblings of two narcissistic wizards who conjure the essence of inspirational people every week and bring it straight to you.
And just how do you plan on doing that? Magic. Motherfucker.
And now for the wizards themselves, David Amaya and Phil Arroyo.
Man, it's bad outside today. I like,
It is fucking miserable outside today. God damn.
and I wish that I was as energetic as I thought I would be. I thought I was gonna just like wake up and make the most out of my day off because this is actually the first day off I've had probably since last start in the park, and that I can't really even count as a full day off because of all the work that has to be done to go.
Yeah, that's
set
not
up.
really one.
And then prior to that, it was like another long stretch of just non-stop work. So, I mean, it feels great though. So I actually worked through and picked up somebody else's shifts. So I have today, tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday off. And I was feeling.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I mean, we have our in park Sunday, and we have I've got the fundraiser for something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but coming up on Saturday. But like I was really thinking I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to go camping. I'm just going to take a couple days off and just get out of here by myself. And with beating myself up earlier about, well, fuck, what am I doing? I'm not being as productive. But I realized, sometimes you just need to listen to your body and relax. I was just like sleeping.
No, seriously. Burn yourself out that way.
I know. I was sleeping and woke up like, okay, we're gonna do the podcast because both you and I are busy, so we're doing it a little bit later than usual. But I woke up and I was like, I gotta go get this done before, and I just fell back to sleep. Fell back asleep, and I was like, this feels great. Just let yourself.
You know what? Take it, man.
Yeah.
Enjoy it because you earn it. People can't work 7 days a week. Back to back to back to back to back like that. We're not designed to do that. Like, it really is more productive to take that day off. Let yourself reset, recharge, get back to being who you are. Because you can keep pushing that envelope. You can keep burning that nung chapa at both ends there, but it's gonna burn out pretty quick, and then you're getting zero done, and you're not any help to anybody right there.
Exactly. And it's kind of the condition of people who work a lot to just like feel that it's, the more you work, the less you feel that you're working, or like the more you feel that you need to get more
absolutely.
stuff done. And so
This guy right here.
Yeah, and I think that it's become more and more apparent, with our country and like how we've been, brought up to believe that like it's all about hard work and get to work, and you think like you have to just be out there, just if you're not working at least 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, just slaving away as many hours you thought that you're not like doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's kind of looked down upon by so many people, the other people who just
Well, I mean, that's a pretty reasonable standard right there. It's the people who are pushing it way beyond that I think, and I mean, like, that's kind of necessary now. It's kind of fucked up.
True.
But I mean, like, 40 hours a week should be like, what if you work 40 hours a week? Like, you should be able to live your life, have a basic, bottom line, like, decent standard of living, no matter what you do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. And that kind of goes along with what I was, kind of saying that, other places have made it much more like it's doable, like with even just 30 hours a week or working 4 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
Taking 3 days off, because what happens when you have 2 days off, even people who don't work 7 days a week. It's like, yeah, well, you gotta go,
Everything else with life gets done in those 2 days.
the laundry, or you like if you're you go to church or something, that's like the day you spend at church, and you're like, well, I just wasted that day. Kind of like,
Yeah.
well, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but I didn't get to do it. So I don't know. It does more and more feel as though that sort of thing was I don't know how much it was designed to keep us feeling becoming essentially slaves. To just be
Yeah.
keep your head down and keep getting back to work and let us worry about this stuff. And I don't know, man. A lot of things have been really just coming into perspective in even greater ways after I've been watching a couple different episodes or a couple different series, sorry, on Netflix that are kind of relative to just things that are going on right now. And not like directly relative, but history often repeats itself, and you start to see patterns. You start to see
Oh yeah.
the same things over and over again. And those shows that I'm talking about, one of them is The Last Stars, which is really freaking good. It
But what's that one
it's
about?
about basically the fall of the Russian Empire, the Russian Revolution, and because it's hard for me growing up during when all of my stuff about the Russians being focused on the Cold War, just kind of like this heavy Soviet Union, where you realize there was you just go back and kind of I always wonder what goes on in Russia, because like you have more. I have more of like had more of like an insight to other countries, like other cultures, but like what is the culture of what was the culture of Russia even before all of that stuff? And you see that it's not necessarily better in any way, it's just different, and there's a really interesting country of how they've gone back and forth and just not really ever found the right way to like be a really, I don't know, like just a free country. It just seems like there's just nothing but suffering
Yeah.
going on. But it's really interesting with history because there's just certain things that you learn that when you learn in high school, like about Rasputin and stuff like that, that just you weren't really getting the full history. It kind of sheds some insight to some other things. Not saying that he wasn't, definitely a very, very scary figure in his own right, but it was just
Well, what's what's like a paradigm that turned on its head that you learned from that?
well, I would say that he was somebody who really shook up a lot of the I found myself relating to him more than I would have ever thought before. Not saying that there's definitely a line that was crossed, and there's definitely like a Manson like quality to him, though not really. I think that he got caught up in his own thing for being a holy man or whatever. But the fact that he pushed and shook the what was already established, and what the stuff that was already set to be a holy person, or even just like the conservative people of the time, who obviously hated him because he had great influence over the Tsar and his family and the decisions being made. But there were obviously other conservative people who wanted to uphold the monarchy, and he had ways of influencing the Tsar in different ways than what they wanted. Plus just some gnarly shit that supposedly by these accounts, by these stories that happened, that you're like, wow, that's pretty fucking interesting. The sort of miraculous stories, the things that he had done as a healer or whatever. You're like, I don't know how much of that is true, but this is what we have to go off of even after we've uncovered all of these things. And you're like, it's different hearing it in a different way, hearing it more. And something to add on top of that, another show that did that for American history, as well as the history of the world, because it happens to be going on during both World War One and Two, was The Untold History of America by Oliver Stone. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you checked it out yet?
I have not.
It's
I'm not.
really, I mean, it's kind of like something you would expect a history professor to just go and play today in in class. It's just him narrating history as it goes on, and kind of breaks it up into different episodes based on different parts, but it goes more into really showing how our leaders weren't, or how we've really been just in our own way following a lot of propaganda our whole lives, about how we've come to win the war, and how it was just like us that did all of this stuff, and you with certain leaders, but also
Yeah.
going into something else that
that was on my mind. It kind of tied into this theme that shit, losing my thought here, but about like the fact that racism and all of these things that so many people are really just trying to still pretend, or that they really don't see it themselves in a person, like they're not aware of it themselves, and so they don't think that it's still relevant or that it's still here. Like these things kind of prove, these shows really prove that it was not long ago that this like horrendous shit was happening. And like stuff like Truman, for instance, as president, who was a fucking idiot, who didn't know anything, was also just like a blatant racist, and like accounts of him just like referring to black people as niggers all the time, like just that kind of thing. And just ridiculous stuff, man. It's
I've been picking up. That's kind of been a new fascination of mine as well, and that I've been picking up from all sorts of different sources, like just little tidbits of history in areas that like make everything now seem so familiar, and just I think properly contextualize like this 400-year battle that we've been fighting with entrenched systemic racism, and yeah, man. I mean, that stuff is is a trip.
So
I mean, I was
go ahead.
I was hearing Lee Atwater, who was President Reagan's, fuck, I think it was Nixon's campaign manager, who famously employed the quote Southern strategy, which was the kind of been the Republican playbook ever since in the '60s there. As a response to the Civil Rights Act and LBJ and whatnot. But, hearing him say, like, oh, people are too savvy. Like, you can't just be explicitly racist, but we've got to cater to these white people by using all this coded language and all these things, like tax cuts, like states' rights, like, all these things that are still being said over and over today. And I know I've read the quote, but I had never heard it, and I actually heard it on tape this week, and that was very striking to me, to see the way that they the way they kind of explicitly framed all these things and said, no, this is all coded language for outright racism. And actually the period of Reconstruction following the Civil War, that has also been something that I didn't really know a lot about, which was utterly fucking fascinating to me, because I'm reading up on this shit, and it's like, wow, there was legitimately so much movement towards actual racial harmony and equality, and things were about to be moved in a serious kind of very good, interesting direction. And what I didn't know was that after Lincoln picked Andrew Johnson to be his vice president, because Andrew Johnson was this, insane, racist, and just he was a Donald Trump of that era,
Right.
and Lincoln did that because he was trying to, kind of bring about some unity with the country following the Civil War. He wanted he wanted to kind of placate the South and make them feel a little bit better about coming into the Union, because he didn't want things to kind of break up again. He was still trying to kind of ease the tensions over there. And so, he said, okay, well, we'll hire this guy for this position that really doesn't do anything, for vice president. We'll bring this guy in, and then that'll kind of smooth things over. And then once Lincoln was assassinated, and that guy became president, Andrew Johnson basically did a lot of the things that we're seeing now. Of course, actually worse than what we're seeing now, but basically dismantled all of the protections and progress that was being kind of implemented following the Civil War, in this era of Reconstruction, where they were trying to legitimately, integrate, formerly enslaved black folks into society, and seeing how this, unabashed racist really just threw a Molotov cocktail and all of that following an assassination, and doing damage that was never really undone. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that kind of stuff has just been, fascinating me lately.
Well, it was so the one of the things that I was thinking about throughout watching both of these series was that like the other day I posted or I shared a meme on my Instagram story, and it was basically the Confederate flag next to the the German Nazi flag, and it said something along the lines of like, if you wave these flags to if anybody waves these flags today, they are not a real American. We fought 2 wars about this. Like, they cannot call themselves a real American if they're actually waving these flags. We fought 2 wars about this. Like, come on. Like, it was something simple like that, and I thought that was, when I saw that, I shared it because it was, yeah, it's fucking true. Like, if you were actually waving both of these flags, you can't really call yourself a true American. We're not for these anymore.
Yeah,
We've decided against this. We've come past this. Well, after that, somebody, and I'm not going to get into who it was, and I'm not even going to badmouth this person really, because I'm not badmouthing them at all actually, because this is one of the things that's concerning to me. This person is pretty young, but they are very intelligent. I noticed after I've met them once, I've talked to them, had a great conversation with them about art, about all kinds of things, and I do think that it's just, I think that it's a product of being misled by certain people who can appeal to somebody in a certain time, like a certain probably desperate situation. So this kid, and I call him kid because he's roughly about, early, like 19, 20 years old, maybe at the most. And he responds to this and he says, just FYI, in historical context, the Confederate flag is actually more like the "Don't Tread on Me." It wasn't about slavery or keeping slaves at all. And I was just like, well, just FYI, in historical context, the Nazi flag or the Nazi symbol, the swastika, also meant well-being in Sanskrit. But we all know that anybody waving that after 1933 is fucking racist. That's just plain and simple. And then also the "Tread on Me" flag is already definitely pushing it, because I explained to him, I said, I know a lot of people who claim to be libertarians who don't see themselves as racist at all, or they don't understand that by kind of ignoring or glossing over the issues that we have here, it's making them they're unaware that they're racist, or they're unaware that they're supporting racist ideals, because the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, for a lot of them means like, just don't tell me what to do with my guns, don't tell me what to do with my freedom of speech, don't try to change the Constitution. Like, these are the the libertarian the values, right? Well, it's like, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but I feel like it's a way of glossing over systemic racism, the idea that it still exists. To which he replied, I don't believe it exists. The only thing that exists is the only form of racism that exists is affirmative action. And that's when I'm like, oh man, okay. I'm like trying really hard right now to like not lose it or not blow up on this person, because I do think, and I still stand by what I say, that, and I mean, we've seen it, you and I have seen it on Facebook, where people,
I saw you do it this week.
I feel that it needs to be done more, because I see it so much, where I get it and I understand, man, how frustrating it can be to try to argue these points to people. But I just don't think that the way that people are handling it is being effective, because it's kind of just stooping to the lower level of calling names and really just not making your point understood. And that's why I would encourage people to kind of just avoid battling on Facebook, discourage them to like get into that, kind of save it for the interpersonal communications, unless you're willing to take the time to handle it a certain way. But to go back to with this kid, I was patient and I heard him out. And so I said, okay, so what, like, I go, man, if you look into this further, you will see that there is definitely systemic racism. I go, just look into the war on drugs and how they strategically planted these drugs in neighborhoods of minorities and poorer neighborhoods to keep them in shambles. And he was like, well, I could kind of agree with that. So it's like, okay, cool. One point, that we're making, we're getting we're getting ahead on this point over here. But he was trying to say, I go, systemic racism on paper. I mean, affirmative action. I can understand where on paper, when you're reading it, it sounds like, well, that's counterproductive to getting rid of racism, because now their argument is that, well, now you're allowing for people who don't deserve the job to get the job based on their skin color. And I said, look, you have to understand, not that long ago, it was segregation existed. Not only did segregation exist, but even after the civil rights movements, where we abolished, we got rid of a lot of things that were legal, it still wasn't illegal for a person to just turn down a person based on anything. And you better believe that there are way more examples of racial injustice, like infinitely more examples of racial injustice due to they're not being affirmative action in place, than by having affirmative action put in place. Like, I go, like, let me ask you this, like, what examples of affirmative action have you experienced, and like that have been unjust? Tell me. And he said that he used an example about getting into school, the school that he wanted, the school he applied for, and that on paper, he and a friend of his who was a girl, and I asked him later, I said, was she by chance a black girl, or a Latina, or a person of color? And he said, no, just she was a white girl, but just a girl, because his argument was that it was sexist and racist. And I said, so what was the deal? And he goes, well, we both had the same GPA, we both had the same hobbies, everything on paper was the same, except I was just a little bit better, but I didn't get accepted. And that was literally the reason why he believed that, like, why you know what I mean? Like, just one thing that happened to him personally that isn't even really, I hate to say it, because I was apologetic. I said, I was like, I'm sorry that happened to you, and that was unfair. Like, I would imagine that there might be more that goes into that. I can't say for sure. And because I said, what did they tell you? And he says, well, you're just the typical, that, we regret to inform you, this and that. And I go, well, man, that could have been, there are so many other reasons why that could have happened, but I am sorry that happened to you. But I'm thinking, like, man, that's just the kind of shit that, like, these people out there,
you have to submit essays and stuff like that. Like, there's no exactly even candidate. There are other things that could explain that.
Right.
But I
so it's kind of like, on one hand, you want to say, man, like, you do want to go and just lay in on them in a rough way and say, like, bro, like, I could show you how, like, you complaining about this is just not even, like, it's not even on the same level, not even close to the same realm of the injustice or the inequities that minorities suffer from. And his thing was too, he's like, oh, it's okay, well, now I guess he goes to I don't want to even say the school, but the school that he goes to he's the minority at his school. And I said, yeah, man, we're in California. We're in Southern California. And there's a very small area of, like, Southern California where, that's going to happen. The rest of the country by far is not like this. It's definitely not, it's not in favor of people of color. And I said, and he said that, yeah, they hate white people at my school. And so that was kind of something that made me think, like, that goes along with what I've been trying to say. And I think I've talked about it on the episode where we had Olivia on, where I brought up that the goal should not be to flip, to turn it upside down. And it wasn't that I believe that, like, we're going to flip it and that white people will eventually be marginalized. I don't think that that's going to happen. I know that's not going to happen. But the intention behind it, like, if that is the goal that people are pushing forward to, like, literally, and I do see it where people go out and treat white people that might just be clueless. They might just be ignorant and clueless to something, that little stuff does kind of push it and adds to this fucking army of fucking orcs that are assembling because of, Donald Trump and people like him and Roger Stone or any other alt-right people who use these sort of small examples to relate to people and kind of just brainwash them into believing, well, no, that doesn't exist. the Gavin, whatever his name is, the guy from fucking McInnes, like going on Rogan and saying like, yeah, I don't believe that exists. It's bullshit. Racism doesn't exist. And Joe's like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, it's bizarre, but
yeah, no,
go ahead.
I get what you're saying there, and it is a difficult needle to thread there, because you're right, and there are a ton, like fuckloads of awesome white people. Like, that seems like a weird sentence to even have to say,
Right.
because it is so self-evident,
Right.
I mean, I think it's really, kind of crazy to think that, to think that, and the point being with a lot of these arguments that do specifically target white people is that, like, every white person is benefiting from a system that was set up by people who are not themselves, and that is, like, not something to blame them specifically
Right.
on, but it's that, like, we all need to work together to build a multiracial, harmonious, movement of people to actually work towards real equity and equality and prosperity.
Right.
Because those things, like, I was actually just listening to this guy, and fuck, I cannot remember his name. I will look it up while I say this, but he had these, kind of very incredible, things to say about how he had this very cogent argument about how racism, cultural racism, actually follows the systemic racism, and that, like, you set up this hierarchy where you're like, okay, these people are going to be, it's basically the aristocrats sowing division among the lower people in order to keep their power entrenched where it is.
Right.
And that racism has always been a tool of the aristocracy, and not so much that. And that, like, you start with the inequality, which would be slavery.
Right. Exactly.
And then the cultural ideas follow
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Through, God doesn't believe these people are real people. And then, they make the science go, oh, their brains are biologically smaller. And then, trying to justify it. All of that comes, it's an ad hoc argument, or it was made after the fact, that, they realize that, like, it is way more profitable to be able to do this, because racism, ultimately, if you look at the data and the way things break down, racism ends up hurting white people the most. Like, if you de-aggregate all the numbers across countries, stuff like that, like poverty, and a lot of these policies that affect people that we talk about and how they're intended to affect black people, they actually affect more white people than they do black people, by virtue of them just being, there are more of them. But that being said, like, the example that he used, which was great, was that in North Carolina they blocked the ACA funding that was basically free, because they didn't want the ACA to take effect in there and have people kind of start to, realize the benefits of their healthcare. And people would vote it down because white people think, okay, well, at least black people aren't going to get it. But that being said, it's like, 500,000 people did not get healthcare. Like 289,000 of them were white.
Right.
Like, and the rest of it's that way.
Well, yeah.
And actually, this goes back to what I was saying about Reconstruction earlier, and that legitimately, like, a lot of these programs, like historically black colleges and all these things that are thought of now as things that, were put in place to, help, assist black people, were historically actually multiracial, and that they actually were helping poor white people as well. Like, things were segmented not by race, but by class.
Right.
And income inequality. And it was a really kind of wild argument to hear, because in the middle, like, it was just so poignant and, inspiring. And the dude's name was Reverend Dr. William Barber II. So, yeah, read into him. I just kind of discovered him yesterday, and I've been looking at his stuff, and he is a fascinating character.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Andrew Barber II, he said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
William
Barber
Barber.
II.
Okay, William Barber the second.
Yeah, Reverend Dr. William Barber II. It was inspiring as shit. Like, I came out of that, like, just having a fucking rough day of watching the news, because this came after the president's rally last night, where he whipped everybody up into a fucking racist frenzy, where they were chanting send her home, talking about an American congresswoman.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean, that whole thing too. I've gotten into it with. I can't believe. Anyways, go on.
yeah, it just that was just a. I mean, it's demoralizing to see that. To see a full on, outright, textbook racist rally, and to see those chants kind of break out, and we're talking about elected members of Congress in the middle, like, in all this. It just is. It's rough, And so the listening to that speech by Reverend Dr. William Barber was it made me get up this morning and be ready to go again, because that it's just been a brutal fucking week on a lot of ends, and this shit always ramps up during particularly crazy times. And I think, actually, if I were to log off and check the news in an hour or two, we'd get some pretty, some more crazy stuff. But anyways, you were about to make a point. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that was, the whole, obviously the border, the issue at the border right now, and people's dissonance, where it's like even people who I don't think are, just hateful or unintelligent, they kind of rest on that. Well, it's illegal. They shouldn't have come here. It's illegal. And then, but the biggest issue that they have really is not even about the issue. It's about AOC. Like, they don't like her. And I mean, the reasons for why they don't like her is because of their own dissonance. It's like, it is their own, in the sense that the racism that they have that they don't even realize is like, well, what are your reasonings for disliking this person? But even aside from that, like, this issue here has nothing to do with her. She just happens to be one of the people speaking out against it. This is something that's inhumane. And I mean, that thing I posted with Joe Rogan the other day, like, that he said a while back, was perfect. Like, I mean, he articulated it so well in layman's terms, something that people can understand, that they should understand. He's like, yeah, I don't have to agree with you on policy. I don't have to agree with you on all these things. But if you can actually, be there in the presence of a woman who is coming here seeking a better life with her child, and is getting the child taken away from her, and she's crying in front of you, and you think that is okay, you're not freaked out by that, then there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you to just rest on this idea, well, it's illegal. I mean, fucking think of how many illegal things everybody does each day. Legality does not, and it will never be the set the bar for morality, really.
Slavery was
exactly
illegal. There's Nazis were legal, like, and the things they did to the Jews were illegal. Like, legality is not the bar for,
exactly,
I guess, barbarity. Like, it's fucking
exactly.
Yeah.
And but the people that are also saying this are stuff that I do illegal things with on a daily basis, like, just saying that, and it's like, well, what if you jaywalked, and you got your baby taken away from you? Like, this is, seeking asylum is not illegal, and the thing about the false equivalency in that video too, the video that was straight propaganda, and I yet to talk to that person in person about it. She's yet to comment about this stuff on her Facebook. So I don't know whether it's more like, the what they're trying to stir things up or what, but there was a couple different ones. The first one was that 3-minute video that we talked about last week, where they went in and supposedly thoroughly debunked, like, the myths that she was saying, which is bullshit and straight propaganda, because it was the most her. And I think since then that video was deleted from that account. But then this one where she's questioning the person who wrote wrote the Separations Act, the Family Separations Act. And, you know, he was in his responses just using blatant, like, textbook like propaganda by saying, yes, I wrote this to save lives. He had to keep throwing out there, saving lives. It's like, no, you're not saving any lives here. You were being an asshole. But, you know, so she asked the questions, and he uses this major false equivalency of, if I, you know, if I was to get a DUI right now and I had a child in the car, we would be separated from each other. When I was a cop in New York City and I arrested a man for domestic violence, he was separated from his kids. And it's like, okay, yeah, first of all, seeking asylum and coming in here, not doing any harm is not any of those things. Secondly, they do not.
It's legal. It's internationally legal. All of that is legal. These are legal processes.
But secondly, they do not remain missing, or they do not go missing and remain separated from their families. That is the thing. Like, that's the biggest issue. Yeah, like, okay, you get a DUI, the kid goes away. Like, it doesn't remain that way.
Yeah, they also get a trial.
Yes.
They also get all of these other basic rights that are enshrined in the Constitution for everybody on this soil, not just citizens.
Yes, and the thing about this is also, like, okay, the process, people, they could go through the proper channels. You know, my grandparents did it. It's like, yeah, your grandparents were Europeans that came over. There was not a big problem because, sorry, they're like, you know, that's because they're white.
It takes 30 years.
You know, it wasn't as hard for them. But then these people who are coming over here there are these reports that are just, it's really easy for people to say, well, no, those are false. She's a cunt. AOC is a cunt. So they're false reports. She's just lying. She's making it up. But there are numerous reports of how many people did go through the proper channels and have been put into this limbo state to where they eventually just get pushed back because there is, like, it's just not working out. They're not actually, like, they're not trying. They're not trying to allow these people in. They're using all of the roadblocks that they can, or the things that say, well, go through the proper legal channels. And I mean, I would be,
I've seen it happen. Yeah. I have worked with people trying to get multiple people trying to get their immigration papers, and it takes fucking tens of thousands of dollars for people who have nothing already. Yeah. And it takes years and years and years. And then I worked with somebody on this for a very long time. And then I watched as they fucking got denied over, like, a slight, like, paperwork violation.
Oh, dude.
And said, oh, you got to start the whole thing over. After he had spent... this guy had nothing. Yeah. He managed to scrounge up, like, $15,000 to do this over, like, 4 years. And then they just said, oh, nope, sorry, you got to start over.
What?
The process is bullshit.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, here's something from Twitter that I retweeted a couple weeks ago. But it said... This guy said, my dad just received a letter. He could begin the process to try to get my uncle his papers. My dad filed that petition 23 years ago. My uncle passed away 2 months ago. So this is for all those why don't you just cross legally people. I mean, this is the process that we're talking about. These people don't understand at all like what they're doing and how this administration has not just done that, but they have made it virtually impossible to do it legally. Because it's not about illegal immigration. It has never been about illegal immigration. It's been about immigration. It's been about the color of your skin. And that is exactly why he can get up there and he can tell 3 born and bred American congresswomen and one who's been a citizen for a decade longer than his wife to go back to their country.
Yeah, that's...
AOC's Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is America.
Yeah.
Their whole ancestry is this country.
Right.
And so it's not about that. And it's never fucking been about that. And the only, you know, it just gets more blatant, more obvious every fucking day. That is literally there's a federal guideline. What is it? The federal governmental body that policies racial discrimination at work uses, quote, go back to where you came from as literally the textbook example of potentially unlawful bigoted harassment.
Yeah.
Like, these are just fucking facts, man.
Well, Jose
And it is crazy to me.
Jose would be a person that could share a lot of his own experiences with this, because that's what he does. And Jose's for anybody not listening, we've had Jose Gloria on the show before. He works with what was the guy's name from Anaheim? Moreno.
It was
Moreno.
the mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he that's what he does, is he's a translator for people and helps them with the process of getting in. And he's successful in getting a couple people in here and there, but the amount of people that are coming through the proper channels and being able to do the same thing is just probably absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't know the numbers, so I'm not going to pretend, but I definitely can imagine that it's absurd. And if people only knew, maybe, hopefully, that would be enough information to show them, even though I don't think so, because I do unfortunately believe that anybody who does use that has bought into this simple-minded fear of them coming over here and ruining our country and making it a worse place, because they're going to take our jobs supposedly. No, it's people like Donald Trump who would take your jobs, people like him who don't give a fuck about you. Business people, he may not have been a politician, but he was a businessman, and a very, very bad businessman, a very, very shady businessman, and it's not to say like that doesn't happen on both sides of the spectrum. Like, there are definitely politicians that are on the left that also run very, very shady, businesses and fucking do a lot of fucked up shit too. So let's just get that argument out of the way and focus right here on what's happening right now, and not worry about going back and forth and saying, well, you did this, you did that, you did this. Like, let's fucking focus on one thing for once. Let's fucking get that out of the way. And then,
because a party's not going to get us out of this.
No.
This is also something that the reference there. It needs to be a movement of people. Not hung up on the party ideology and those things. Because absolutely. Like, you want me to get a fucking rant going about the Democratic Party right now? Ooh, I will. That is a fucking corrupt institution.
Right.
Like, the baseline bones of it and shit like that. It irks me to no end. But there is no practical, real way to operate outside of them, because at least they've got the people who give a shit. There's no such thing. There's no viable independent third party, and I'm not convinced there's ever going to be one. And so you need to fix these things from within, and things have been fixed massively, way more than they were before. And I pulled this quote, and I didn't really have a good kind of segue to interject it, but I think this is a relevant thing, just from a comment that I found on Reddit earlier this week that it just struck me. This guy, Radiant Wave on Reddit, says, every time someone asks why the right supports Trump or McConnell's bullshit, I tell them the answer is simple. 22 years of Fox News telling the right that the left is doing all of the same things we complain about Trump over. Forget any standard of journalistic integrity. The right-based news lied for decades, and the left did nothing to stop it in the name of freedom of the press. The left took the high road right off a cliff. The right today accepts the criminality of their leaders because they had been told for decades that this is exactly what the left has done forever. From the Clinton scandals all the way through Barack being a foreign-born Muslim. While the left laughed, the right believed this shit. And this is what they see as their payback. It is about getting even for something that never happened. And of course, because the left never fought back hard enough, it must have been true. And I was like, damn, that is a fucking phenomenal way to summarize the entire situation and how we find ourselves now. Because recontextualizing all of the bullshit that went on, especially during Obama's presidency, but even going back way further to Clinton and Jimmy Carter, it's insane. Like, somebody reminded me of the, quote, beer summit that happened under Obama's watch. And I don't know if you were following this or recall this at all, but it was when there was a black professor who was actually arrested because he was trying to get into his own home and he had forgot his keys. And so he was trying to figure out ways to get in there. The cops were called, he was able to prove. He's like, no, officer, this is my house. Like, this is my driver's license. This is my ID. I just lost my keys. And they still arrested him and went and processed him. Like, just blatant fucking racism there.
Mm-hmm.
And Fox News just ran with this for forever. They ran with it for weeks, saying, oh, okay, like, Obama doesn't support the police, like, blah, 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 because he said that the cop acted stupidly, which he did. And then the president said, okay, like, now I'm going to have the beer summit, which is what it was called, to sit down and have a beer with the two of them and hash it out. But that right there, like, that's been their playbook, you know, this fake outrage to, you know, like, that was seeding the kind of the things that they needed to work for them down the road. Like, it's been this giant coordinated strategy to kind of dismantle the other side's you know, just frame of reference, basic reality. And that's how we're seeing this fucking twisted right now. It's because it's the propaganda. It's this unceasing propaganda that's been going on for 20 years. And speaking of that, like, have you caught The Loudest Voice yet, by any chance? Have we talked about this yet?
Not familiar.
Okay, The Loudest Voice is the show on Showtime. It's a limited run miniseries.
Damn, it's
about Roger.
Another show that I want to see. Showtime I don't get, but I need to figure out a way to make that happen. Go on.
Showbox, unofficial sponsor. It follows the life of Roger Ailes.
Okay.
And how he went and started Fox News, and how he kind of rose up, and the actions that he took and stuff like that. And it is just fascinating in that I know a lot of these stories and these touch points kind of going through, but seeing them all back to back, you know, it really drives home the point that like, what is different about now than was different, you know, from throughout history, is this propaganda network. This propaganda network that we have been complicit in allowing to just talk like they have, to spread baseless lies.
Well,
and things like that, to go out and spew this in the interest of you know, both sidesism. And we have taken what we refer to as journalistic integrity, and just it's been exploited for decades now. You know, saying, okay, well, there's two sides to everything, and so we're going to treat this with exactly the same amount of you know, gravitas, of lenience, of respect as the other side of this argument. Which is why we'll get anti-vax people on there, which is, you know, their expert is some mom blogger and an actual scientist who's been studying this for fucking decades, and CNN, who was the fucking worst defender of this of all, will just have both of them on, and then their journalists will not offer, their anchors will not offer any context, and they'll just say, well, that's both sides of the argument, you guys figure it out, you know. And that is the Fox Newsification of our entire media landscape, and that there is this shameless fucking you know, adherence to you know, our journalists should be completely impartial, just reporters in the news. And maybe that was fine in the era of, like, Walter Cronkite, but it is impossible to have that. Like, straight up, I don't respect anybody who claims that they are just completely neutral talking about either side. And when one party has been systematically, in bad faith, arguing that, you know, reality has a well-known liberal bias, it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating to watch all of these things play out. To watch people on TV right now, today, go on and say, oh, is the president a racist? Who knows? Or this is racially charged chants, racially tinged, racially infused. Instead of just saying, yo, what the president is doing and what he has said and who he is explicitly fucking racist. We've been saying this forever, and every day more and more shit comes out that proves that it's fucking true. And it is very difficult to deprogram this shit. But I think what you did the other day was the way to go about it and doing it right, because I watched you on a Facebook thread exercise patience and you know, exercise this, you know, kind of understanding, and really try to sit down and talk through somebody who just came on just shit on a thread with some crazy stuff with no evidence to back it up. And then, when you try to engage with them over it, like, it's because there is a level of accountability when it's people that we know or people that we potentially know. When we're talking about Facebook threads and comments and stuff like that, there is some actual accountability there. It's not just anonymous people online. And those are the ones where I'd say do not even fucking bother engaging with random people online, because for all you know, you could be wasting your time talking to a bot. That is literally a thing that happens all the time.
Or straight up just trolls.
So don't waste your time with
Yeah,
that.
trolls.
Yeah, there's trolls, there's bots. Don't waste your time with that. But this was actually somebody, a real person with their real name, face, everything who they are, came on, said some dumb shit, all right? And rather than shit on them over it, I think you handled the situation well. And I think
you.
those things kind of one at a time, one small step at a time, each of us, it is imperative. We have a duty to actually engage with people who we know. Therefore, we are a reliable, reputable source.
Right.
Somebody who they know we're not just making up some crazy shit. Okay? Because anybody listening to this who doesn't know me, like, they do not trust me as much as people who do know me.
Yeah.
It's always going to be about that. And I think that is the long, arduous task, like the hard work that we have to do to start to deprogram a lot of the crazy bullshit that's been going on.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing, because we've lived most of our lives, I would say, especially if you're, our age or older, not really having to deal with this sort of thing, not really having to take anything seriously enough to really have to face some sort of confrontation from time to time. And it's something that, not saying that you should go out and be confrontational for the sake of being confrontational,
No.
but you should not be afraid to say what you truly feel is right, and have a discussion about it, and not let your fear of losing a friend over something, because the bottom line is that, if that friend is willing to, or is going to look at you or push themselves away from you simply having a conversation with them about something, not attacking them, not belittling them, not berating them, but actually having a conversation and disagreeing with them. If that supposed friend is going to push you away from them for doing so, then they really just aren't your friends. I mean, it's kind of a weeding out of your friends in that case too. But you shouldn't, let the pressures of society or peer pressures of having friends and not losing people stop you from saying what you really feel. And the same goes for, family members, unfortunately. And that's another thing that I think is even the most difficult one, because it seems like, at least, between most of the people I talk to that are my age, no matter what they believe in, it seems like their parents or their grandparents or somebody that they know is so staunchly on to the side of just that kind of, that dissonance of well, no, anything that this left says is just, and what it is, in my opinion, from my observation, what that is it's fear of change, because change is exhausting, but change is inevitable. We need it, and it has to happen. The idea that we can just, the idea that any one form or system, one form of government, any system is going to remain effective or beneficial to everybody, or is ever going to be beneficial to everybody, is absolutely ludicrous and absurd. If you just take a simple scope, zoom back out and look at history as a whole, and name one dynasty or one civilization that is that has lasted forever and never needed to be improved, you will not find one. And it doesn't make us any different. In fact, it makes us we're in a time where we're going to be advancing so much more rapidly than any other time. We already are advancing much more rapidly. The information that is out there, the amount of changes that are going to take place, you have to brace yourself up for it. You can't sit there and try to dig your heels into the sand so much and say, nope, I'm not going to change, because the fact is you are. And it just depends on which side of history you want to end up being on. Do you want to be do you want to disguise yourself as being patriotic, but actually end up being more like the Redcoats during the Revolutionary War, or do you want to be somebody who pushes for the true American ideals and values, which is, pursuit of freedom, liberty, justice, trying to move on and trying to figure out how to how for us to survive and live and coexist with each other.
On that note, it's great that you mentioned that, because I've been listening to this fantastic series lately called Crooked Minis. They do different topics and things like that, but for this month the topic is it's a 4-part series on reclaiming patriotism among liberals in the Democratic Party, and how that has gotten away from us in the wake of a historic shellacking in the Reagan era, and this kind of very entrenched, especially among older Democrats, that like the country is inherently extremely conservative, and that the way that you win elections and do things is by buying into the idea of patriotism set forth by a lot of these folks on the right that were doing it in bad faith. Again, this is actually a small topic covered in The Loudest Voice, where Roger Ailes has the idea is like, hey, and after 9/11, he says, hey, everybody here wears flag pins. Flag pins is now the new thing. Anybody who's not wearing a flag pin is a fucking anti-patriot, like is against America, and that kind of thing. Showing this, making it about the unequivocal, unquestioning faith and love of your government, and not of the ideals set forth by the founders of the nation,
right,
and not by the actual improvement of this country,
right,
loving this country enough to want to work and fight to make it the best possible representation, to actually fight to move towards being a more perfect union. Like, I think that is fucking patriotism, and that is the kind of that is the kind of thing that it is shameful that it was ever let get away from us, because we have been since I think Carter was the last person to fucking actually fight for the things he actually believed in, to actually was not making compromises or lying to people or bringing up all these ad hoc things, trying to be Republican light, like diet Republican. That's exactly where the Overton window has shifted in this country. Everything is so far right that people like Bernie Sanders seem like they're extreme,
right?
And because as you can see, they're going to label anything and everything far left and socialism, and it's been happening since the 40s. Actually, it's been happening since the fucking 1800s. That's what I'm kind of finding out now. Everything will be branded socialism,
right?
There is nothing that you can do that's going to stop or slow the attacks of these people, and they're only getting more craven. And it's a strategy that I think every day it gets harder and harder to deny that the Republican Party is a party that has absolutely sold its soul to the devil of racism in order to win votes, keep power, and to hang on to that. Because if they really felt like they could win on the merits of their argument, they wouldn't be working so hard at voter suppression, at gerrymandering, at packing courts like they are
at
right
rigging
now,
this,
at trying to entrench the power.
Doing the Roger Stone stuff, and you're exactly right, because even adults that I've talked to, it's kind of that, you've got to learn how to play the game. If you want to be effective, you got to go through these proper channels of fixing it. And it's like, no, we need to dismantle that whole way of doing things, because it is true. Even for liberal people who might just set out with the right intentions on their campaigns or whatever, when they're first starting off, they get to a certain point, and the influence, whether it's lobbyists, there's just people out there that special interests get in the way of things too, and they kind of get sucked into the game that's being played already in the political.
The game is self-preservation.
Yeah.
The whole thing is systemic.
Yeah.
It is systemic, the way that it funnels everybody to act like
well,
this. And that's where you get people like AOC, who sat there and said, I don't give a fuck if I'm a one-term congressperson. I am going to do everything I can with these 2 years and this power that I have been given by the people of my district. Mm-hmm. And I am going to do my best to suck and set the place on fire. And my God, more so than any other single congressperson maybe say for Pelosi, she has done to actually affect change in this country and do things in a way. And that's why the right and the coordinated structure of Fox News and all these conservative outlets have been working so hard to demonize her and turn her into this monster. And she has the bravery to go out there every day and put herself out on Instagram Live and answer her constituent questions and questions from anybody else who wants to listen. She is demystified the entire process by making it as transparent and open, and she has given all of this knowledge to everyone in the country, and in doing that has fucking invited. I mean, what's crazy about all of this shit? You go back to your country comments and having that rally be chanting "Send her back," is that this equates to real, absolutely real physical danger to all four of these women that were mentioned in this thing. All right, Ilhan Omar has received so many credible death threats to her family. There are people in her in her district. There have been dead rats and death threats and bomb threats left on the Capitol building and shit like that. Like, it is bad. Like, what these girls are doing it is the most fucking brave thing I can consider. I straight up second guess a lot of the shit that I say sometimes, because I know there are crazy enough people out there, and I am not a private enough person for my identity and actual safety to be actually hidden. Because we do, by virtue of us doing this fucking podcast, like, that I don't do, and these girls are out there every day fighting for what they believe in and what to do is right, and it is commendable. It is the most American thing I can fucking think of. So hashtag I stand with Ilhan, straight up, and all these girls.
Right after the 4th of July, his whole little fucking Trump's little his whole little rally or whatever the fuck parade,
his campaign ad that he spent $100 million of taxpayer money on.
Yeah, and he messed up on his speech and everything too. But anyways, the very next day, because that was the whole thing. Obviously, you're hearing about how he goofed up on his speech from all of the headlines on the left, and then you watch one thing of the Fox News where I don't even know the clowns, that they're young and they look exactly like they were casted to play these like demonic type of politician fucking people. Like it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever watched True Blood, but that one like racist Christian guy that was played
exactly.
So it's like that, so they're sitting on there and they're saying they're gloating about all of the amazing things Trump said and how patriotic it was, and how they said, if you really just didn't think that what he said, this is what the guy said, if you didn't think what he said was the most patriotic and best thing for our country, then you really should question why you're living in America or whether you want to live in America. Like, these were the words came out of his mouth, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? What the fuck is going on?
God damn it, dude. And all of this, and fuck, we're at an hour. And it frustrates me to no end to understand that he does this type of shit to distract from the things he doesn't want us talking about. Like the fact that Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested, and Trump absolutely raped children in his past. 100%. It is in court filings. It is in documentation. They're about to fucking drop this shit. All right? And now video was unearthed yesterday of him hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein multiple times. And in the video, you can see, and this is of him and Jeffrey Epstein hanging out at a party with 28 girls and them two. And then you can see at the party, Trump literally grabbing and groping a woman. And there are other, there's an interview afterwards where he talks about just grabbing and kissing women, like, in front of her husband, stuff like that. And there are court filings about Trump and him getting into an argument about who is going to rape a 15-year-old girl first. And it is horrifying. And this is the kind of news that he's trying to distract us from. And I hate that I have spent the entire time talking about that, talking about the other stuff, and not this, because this is his fucking plan. But he is a goddamn monster and an absolute danger to this country. I say it every week, and oh, fuck, man. Well, we are doing our best here. We missed a lot of shit, you know, like you know, in Ferguson too. We didn't talk about this, but there was an activist who was she was the founder of this what was her? Sorry, let me get her name real quick. Let's see, in Baton Rouge. Yeah, Sadie Roberts Joseph. That's what it was. She was the founder of an African American History Museum, the Otis L. Williams and then Museum of African American History. And she was found murdered in the trunk of her car. She was also one of the primary people who was involved in organizing the Ferguson protests. And she is now one of 6 people who have wound up dead in the 3 years since that happened. This is not a joke. This is not something that I've even really seen covered in any great depth. But the people who started Black Lives Matter are dead. All of them. Murdered or mysteriously died. Like, this shit is real and crazy shit is going on. And I will look more into this. We can talk about it some more next week. But god damn, man. Like, these are the things that go under the agenda because because of these things, these outbursts. They're planned, you know? And I guarantee you, watch next Wednesday when Robert Mueller is scheduled to testify in front of Congress, there will be some other crazy shit going on because that rally happened on the same day that he was supposed to testify. That's when that rally was scheduled. There will be something happening next Wednesday. I fucking just watch for it. Mark my words, man, because this is exactly the playbook that he goes by. But we cannot let any of these slide by. All of these add up to some horrific shit. And every day that Nancy Pelosi does not fucking push forward articles of impeachment is a day that I think is an absolute dereliction of duty, and that kind of summarizes my problems with the Republican Party as of this moment. But anyways, we are out of time, so let me actually finish with a story that I found this week that I kind of forgot about a while ago, but a fun little fact. In 1989, the cash-strapped Soviet Union paid Pepsi 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer in exchange for $3 billion worth of Pepsi. This caused Pepsi to become the 6th largest military power in the world for a moment before they sold the fleet for scrap recycling. I just thought that was a fun fact because there was a time in history
where Pepsi
had the 6th largest military in the entire world. And things like that just bring me endless joy.
Well,
So
they do have
bring
weapons
that.
of mass destruction that are very effective in everyday life
Oh my
with
fucking beautiful tags.
with
sir.
their
beautiful
with their
tag.
food. their food is I mean, I saw a chart the other day with between PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Nestle, and what was the other one? I forget the other one, but like, you know, just showing basically how they literally control all forms of all markets. So even when you're going and buying organic stuff, you're still buying it from them, and there's no way of really knowing that it's for sure organic. But like, you could buy the cheap stuff from them and the expensive organic stuff from them. So either way, they win. And yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yep, this is late stage capitalism for you guys.
Right. And so
Which as somebody joked a while back, is going to make socialism real easy when there's only one company to take over.
Yeah.
To enforce the government on.
right.
If it's all just one, that'll make it simple.
When we have Commander Jeff Bezos and like just fucking
Man, we are opening so many cans of worms, like the fucking face app thing I did. I gotta read that book Badger was talking about before next week, because there is some other. God damn it, we should make this show 3 hours, but I think that people have fucking sat through it long enough, and so I make sure that you guys are subscribed to the show, because as you can tell, we've got a lot to fucking say.
If you
And there,
if you've lasted this long through the show, then thank you very much, because we know that for a lot of
We
people
appreciate
don't
it.
really, as soon as politics get brought up, they're like, oh no, like, you know, and we definitely were not a show founded or started on politics, but it is something that is important, and you know, we are experiencing this in our day-to-day lives, and though we, you know, are still always going to have people when we can come on and talk about the stuff that they're doing that are rad, and the positive things that we're working toward to make this, you know, world a better place through art, through you know, through other technological innovations that can really do some good in this world. It still is important to talk about the reasons why all of these things are important. So you know, this is something that's relevant. Let It Bleed is about letting your passions bleed out, and you know, you could tell that we're passionate, especially Phil, very, very passionate about this, and finds it very, very important that we all know what we're experiencing in the present. You know, we don't want to be waiting until 30 years from now when they make a Netflix or whatever, you know, dominant streaming site makes an original show about the scandals that we're living through right now, and be like, oh, I had no idea, you know. So like it's important to stay up to date and to just keep up with it. So thank you.
and just as important to also recharge and have those palate cleansers, exactly like you were talking about at the top of the show.
Yeah.
The art, the life, the loving that we need to do to like keep ourselves whole as people and hang on to our own humanity. That is super fucking important too. And I do not want that to get, you know, me being the herald of all things terrible on this show. I do not want that fact to get overlooked.
Yeah.
That shit is just as important. Fucking love your life, love the people around you, and just be a force for good.
Yeah, come out and see one organization this weekend that is, you know, that is trying to do just that. We through the arts and through their practices, by upholding, you know, like Burning Man principles, which are principles, you know, that people truly believe, and they've set up this alternative society, this whole alternative thing that really like shows, you know, what could be if everybody kind of really just, you know, really just believed in it. And anyways, we're having a Burning Man fundraiser, which I am going to. That's another thing I didn't get to talk about that I'm really excited for. I'm going to be going to Burning Man this year for the first time. Something that I feel
Fuck yeah,
that
congratulations,
thank you. Yeah, I got you know, a ticket through. I'm going to be participating and performing in the fire performance with Camp Luma Dance. So if you are going to the burn, look out for our camp. I'll have by next, you know, for the next couple episodes, our exact location and all that stuff. But this Saturday at the Tiki Bar in Costa Mesa, we are having a fundraiser to help us get all of this shit out there. Because if you've seen the stuff that Riley and Marilyn, who I do want to have on the show perhaps next week, come on, and if you've seen the stuff that they've been working on and building, and that the stuff that they actually have to transport and take over there, it is not, you know, this is all out of pocket stuff. You know, this is stuff that it costs money to go out there and really they're fucking letting it bleed. Let me just say that. So come out and support this great cause, and also have fun and enjoy yourself and dance, and you know, and enjoy the things that we all crave each and every day. And aside from that, we also have art in the park the next day. It's the lemonade stand theme. Make a batch of lemonade and come out and share it with us. Let's make some art and have some fun. That is all I have for this week. And you know, like I said, we've been going over it, so let's go ahead and leave it at that. Follow me at Hoodrad Stuff with 3 F's, Phil at Nobody Cares, and then Nobody Cares, or Phil Nobody Cares, and
Phil Nobody Cares on Twitter, Nobody Cares Phil on Instagram.
Exactly. I'm over here trying to do your shit for you and fucking it up.
And at Let It Bleed Cast on all social media.
Yes,
platforms.
follow, like, subscribe, send to your friends, tell them about it. You know, go back and check out other old episodes too, and see if there's something that really, you know, that inspires you. Let us know what you think. But anyways, that is all. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, let it bleed.